I get
Hail
you, man.
Dicelings, and welcome to an interview. This is kind of uncommon for Drop Dice, but we are doing an interview with Team Siren. There we go. My allergies are acting up, so I sound a little nasally today. But the reason I brought them on here is because a friend of mine from a long time ago, Stacy, actually is part of Team Siren, and they are putting together a game called Wasteland Rise of, and you guys will have to correct me on this one because I know I'm going to screw it up, sinuses and all. So what is that? Rise of
Altfelter.
Altfelter. Okay, easier than I expected. So awesome. Um, yeah, so we're going to kind of touch upon what this Kickstarter is, why you should give it a consider, and it is live right now. There is 17 days left, and just real quick, so I can take a look at it and see where we're at in the project. They are at 17,000 out of the goal of 60,000. Now this is a board game, not a traditional tabletop game like I normally do, like the RPGs. So this one may feel like it might be a little bit weird being on the Drop Dice channel since it is mainly focused on RPGs, but we're going to explain why it's not so weird. So first off, I mentioned that Stacy and I know each other for a long time, and how we met was actually in Boston playing Pathfinder as the first game, if I remember correctly. Does that sound right?
It might. I think I started showing up when I think it was Tony ran
Right.
3.5, and then
I was going to say, I
involved
couldn't
in
remember
that.
if we made the switch to Pathfinder yet, or if we were still 3.5, but yeah, we were very early in the Pathfinder ship.
Yeah.
So I want
was
to say
there
it was
for-
probably 2009 at least when we met. We've known each other for a while. We played Star Wars, the Old Republic online together, a couple other games. We've done a bunch of survival games, actually. We typically gravitate towards those and dork around, make ships and stuff like that, and big buildings. But the main reason that Wasteland came up on my radar is not only because Stacy's been pumping out all these different images with cool art and things like that, which I want to touch on. You guys have a couple different artists. Let's talk about kind of like the art that's inside this game, because it's kind of this speed paint kind of style that I really like inside games. Let's kind of talk about that. What was your inspiration for your art? And if you guys go to the Kickstarter, the one thing I will recommend is that you go to the updates. One of those updates, I want to say it's number 3 on there. Let me find it real quick here. It has a picture of a construct inside there, and it is super cool. Let me find it here. While you guys talk about art, I'll find which one it is.
Okay.
No, it's fine.
So to start off with, I went to art school and I know a lot about painting and things in general. Film, I'm not very talented at it myself. And there was a lot of styles that were thrown around while I was at art school that I kind of didn't really see much promise in. They were either very strictly traditional or very much this modern age splatter paint on a canvas thing. So when we got to making the game, there was a few artists I took a lot of things from, and I kind of said to the team, we want to stay within this style. One of those is Ashley Wood. He's an Australian artist that's working currently right now, and he has stuff that's all over the map. Another one, for those of you who do know who Frank Rosetta is, Frank Rosetta was famous for doing watercolor sketches in the same painterly style we're trying to use for Wasteland. The other reason we went with this art style is because we want this to feel more or less like, I don't want to say a dream, but it's not reality. It's another reality that you're looking at. You're involved in, you become involved in. And so keeping that visual cue where it's not stark, but it's also not so dreamy, so dreary that you can't tell was our goal with this art style. And then Stacy can go ahead and add some stuff too.
Well, I was actually brought on to the team, I want to say about a year after you guys started working on the actual game.
It was about 2 years.
Yeah.
Katie had been working on it for a while.
Yeah, so essentially I come from a similar background as John, went to art school, all of that, in Philadelphia Art Institute, and essentially what happened was he liked my stuff. I started playing around, messing with things, and he's like, hey, we need another artist because there is a large amount of art to get done.
Mhm.
And so I was brought onto the team at that point, and I've been here ever since, I guess.
That's pretty much correct. And then Riley here, sorry, Ben. Excuse me.
It's the online handle.
Wow, I'm terrible at this. Ben here is sort of our master of mechanics, if you will,
Yes.
because his understanding of mechanical things goes far beyond my own. So if you want to add in some stuff, please.
Yeah, basically, John took me under his wing and helped me learn a bunch of the same techniques that he's been using and that all the rest of the team has been using. And I've basically just taken that and applied it to all the mechanical stuff. Kind of tried to stick within the same style, but kind of keep things a little more defined. Go for that whole mechanical feeling. And
yeah, I actually just added a picture of one of the constructs here to the overlay. That's the one that I was like, this is the one that you guys really need to see. It's really striking, and it tells a lot about the setting. So let's kind of talk about that. Like, you mentioned that this project's been going for like 2 years before Stacy came on board. How long has the project been going on, and kind of what has been its evolution?
Well, I started working on this project roughly 4 years from where we are now ago. So it's been going on for about 4 years, give or take a little bit, probably a month or two. And it was because I was doing a role-playing campaign, my own design, my own system, which we'll get to in a little bit, I'm sure, that I wanted to see something come out of it. Everybody loved the campaign, and I wanted to say, can we do this? Are we capable of doing this? And the answer turned out to be yes, with a lot of people being very gung-ho about it at the beginning, and then, of course, time gets involved in things like that. But we got down to a narrow group of people that were really interested in making this come to life. Because at first, I just did it for me and for the players, and now it's something I want to share.
Okay, excellent. So you mentioned you started this as kind of a role-playing setting for your players and really kind of developing the story around them. Because I know my viewers are always interested. What system did you guys use? And if you went through like a series of systems, what kind of led you towards your final choice on it?
I created my own system from square one. I built a system that uses survival. It uses the idea of uses mechanics like dice rolling things, but it uses them in a way that most other systems haven't. The closest approximation to what your viewers might understand as far as how the system functions is something like Tribe 8, or maybe even one of the Warhammer role-playing campaign systems.
Excellent.
However,
I do have a copy of Tribe 8. It's a good system that not a lot of people know about, unfortunately.
It's on my shelf. I wish you could see it. It's right behind me.
I was going to say, mine's 2 feet over.
Yeah, it's great. And a lot of it had to do with what the world needed. When I designed the system, I didn't design the system and build the world around it. I had the world already there. And so I put the system together with the world in mind. And the survival and all that sort of stuff had to be there. It was necessary. So as a result, and if your viewers want to go to the Obsidian Portal, Wasteland 2, they can see how to build a character on their own. It uses a distribution point system, and it doesn't use classes at all. You don't have any classes. You can use weapons as you pick them up. You don't have to worry about, can I use this armor, am I this, blah, blah, blah. It's more based in what you can do in the theater of the mind than what you can do through the mechanics of the system.
Okay, excellent. So it sounds like, and I've seen this inside your Kickstarter, is that the mechanics are a reflection of the narrative, and that's kind of your entire design process. I'd like to hear from players in that campaign. Like, what has the campaign been like for you? What kind of led to the events of the Wasteland Rise of Altfelter box set here?
Tom, why don't you start, since you've been playing longer than everybody?
Mostly I just survive.
Well,
elaborate some, please. Why did you join?
Yeah.
I'd watched with the older players and their banter and just them screaming at the game and crying.
That's funny. My campaign has been compared to Dark Souls meets Fallout.
Okay.
I would have to say, Tom, that there is one scenario that you always have to remember is the fact that Pergus is known for being set on fire.
It's only happened like 3 times.
More than any other character so far. Well, except for the dead ones. But, so, Stacy, then why don't you go ahead and
I got involved after starting to work at Hy-Vee, and I came in during what we're calling Wasteland 2, which is the second iteration of the game, which is dealing with the after effects of that, but it's a lot of survival. It's been great. Like, I was introduced, pretty much what happened was I was able to design a character that I wanted to play, helped fit it into the system, plopped it in the world in one of the most ridiculous ways ever.
It's okay. You just had to fight a giant monstrosity that rolled out of the water well.
Needless to say, my first campaign, I was fighting a construct.
No kid gloves here.
So, yeah, it's definitely something else entirely compared to any number of things I've played. And, we've played a whole bunch of different systems and everything, and I just love it.
Excellent.
I've been involved in so many tabletop campaigns by this point, and I don't know, just a lot of them have ended up feeling the same to me. But when I was sitting in and listening to Wasteland, something about it was just like, I really want to get involved in this because the story is just so unique and everything about it is just, I don't know, just, it's hard to put into words, but it's just its own beast entirely. And it's not nice. Like, there's a lot of people who, if they played the campaign, would be like, oh god, this hurts. But it's fun. Like, it keeps you engaged, even though it does hurt really bad.
It hurts so good.
I mean, that's a way to put it, yeah.
That's fair.
Within this campaign, every monster, every person, everything within this world has an impact on whatever you're doing within this game.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if it's just some random NPC that you run across in the world that just happens to tell you that there's something over this ridge. You might want to see what it is, you might not. Or you're going to end up running against, like Stacy said, a construct, which, if I remember correctly, there's hints of the HP totals being into the millions.
Yeah, that's
and these things are not defeated by normal means of just shooting it with a big gun. No, they are puzzles within themselves. Mm-hmm. So you have to sit there and figure out how to pick it apart in a certain way to where you find its weaknesses and other exploits to where you can actually bring down these creatures that are just immense.
Sounds really interesting. I like puzzle bosses in games, and in RPGs don't make that transition from video games very well very often. So that's really cool that you were able to kind of at least capture an aspect of that and bring it to your table.
Well, it takes a little bit.
Yeah, it takes a little bit of planning to get it right. So let's talk about the Kickstarter that's currently going. So this is a tabletop game that is more of kind of your more traditional like a survival war game is kind of the best way I can think to describe what Wasteland looks like here. There's quite a few options of play inside here. How about we just kind of start with an overview of what gameplay is like in Wasteland and what players should kind of expect out of the game?
Sure, absolutely. So the Wasteland uses an action point system, which we call stamina, and you have a certain number of this that you can use on your turn. Most players are granted 3, some players are given 4, and as you go through the game, there are ways to get more stamina through cards and some various other upgrades you can achieve. So the game itself, though, plays very similarly to a tile exploration game. The recently released Fallout game is a very good example. You have the tiles laid out, you can place them in any fashion you want, they're all around the central piece called the crater, and you move through the world finding these things, discovering what this particular map has to offer you. And of course, you can also find some constructs, which are lurking. There are a number of construct tiles in the game. That final number hasn't quite been determined yet, but we're going to probably be looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of 8 to 12. And it's just sort of a thing that we haven't come to a conclusion on. However, when you find one of these, it pops up in the world, and now everybody around the table has to view it. So you use your action points for exploration, and there's multiple different symbols on the tiles. You can dig, you can look at ruins, you can go and visit villages, and it'll all be very different each time you play because it's a modular game. It is designed to be modular. You have a deck of cards that you draw from, so nothing's ever going to turn out the exact same way you played the previous game. Other things you can do, you're building an empire. It is a survival game, and it certainly has some like territory control aspects, but you're mostly trying to build up your empire to be better than the other people's empire. You collect resources, you'll collect people, which I'm calling specialists, and they'll give you various actions that do not require your stamina points, which, if you remember, are the action points you use for the game. So you have a board that you can customize to you. And we've been playing with some very exciting things in the final design where you can actually customize your technologies as well. Which ones you have might not be as dependent on how well you've researched as it is on how well you can utilize it. Other things that you can do with your action points are you can engage other players, you can engage creatures, and the creatures will be popping up randomly throughout the game once you land on a tile that shares their symbol type. And there is a fluctuating market board that is also used as a way to understand how to kill the creatures, because we're not doing a dice rolling. You roll dice, you kill the thing if you get a certain number, or it kills you if you get a certain number. We have too many games like that on my shelves that just don't feel they just don't feel good in many cases. You lose a dice roll and you're like, well, that sucked. And for RPGs, role-playing games, tabletop games, if you're playing as a character in something like Wasteland, sure. But if you're playing a tabletop game and you lose to a dice and you get killed as a result, it kind of hurts. It makes you feel weird. It's almost like chance just struck you down. So what we engineered was a way that your resources that you gather throughout the game are also used to fight the creatures that you come across.
Okay.
You use planning to get rid of them off the board.
Excellent. That's kind of that wargamey strategy bit that I was kind of talking about there. Now you touched on a couple of things, and I just kind of want to double back and talk about some of the stuff. You mentioned that it's a modular game and you've got these tiles. Knowing math and everything, there is technically a limit to like how much things could be done. But I mean, how many tiles are we getting when we do the $60 complete box coming to our house? Because I'm looking at like your images and stuff like that. It looks like there's quite a few inside there. So there's going to be tons and tons of play options.
We are looking at a finalized number of 80.
Wow, that's
80 tiles.
That is crazy amount of tiles, considering that each tile has, it looks like at least 4 options almost per tile as far as things that you can do with interacting and actually using the tile towards either building your resources or striking out to find one of these constructs and things like that. That's insane how much play will come out of this box, actually.
And then the expansions, of course, will have more tiles.
Yeah, I was going to say, I did want to point out that anybody who is interested in this, one of the stretch goals is it does include expansions with extra tiles. So definitely worth investing in and sharing with your friends so that we can help Team Siren get to their ultimate goals and their stretch goals so that we can all benefit for it. The other thing that I wanted to touch on is you talked about not only the fact that these tiles really change the way the game works, but at least this was a conversation we had just before coming on, is the roles in game and how the rules interact with kind of like almost a specific play set or rules for you as a player, and each player gets this role that they can assume inside the world. So how does that actually work in play?
Well, what I'd like to do with that question, I'd like to open up to the people who play tested it, if that's all right.
Excellent. Let's hear from the players.
Why don't you start?
Oh, Riley can go ahead and go this time.
You start off.
I mean, anyone, or you want me to talk about a specific?
Just talk about the
Character?
roles. Talk about what you've
Like,
done with them and how you've done go.
Like, do you feel a difference when you switch from one role to another?
Oh,
Like, how
absolutely.
specific is some of these goals that you get with these roles?
I mean, they all definitely feel very like you have to strategize around what your character's good at. Like, one of the ones I would play the most often is the Nomad, which they're really good at flipping tiles. They're really good at exploring, not as much at fighting. So when you're playing that character, you have to go, okay, there's a lot of big scary monsters around here. I want to go over there where there's no scary monsters.
Right.
And stuff like that. And then like the Mechanist, focused on building and upgrading your technology and stuff like that. And it just, they all definitely feel very unique.
Which is what we strive for.
Yeah.
Every character has unique abilities and sets that they can go through within the game.
Right.
But everybody is trying to achieve their end goal the same way. They're all trying to please the
Leon. But the roles that we have
change the way you're trying to do it. One of my favorites is actually the one that I put the most work into personally, which is the Hunter. Or the Trapper.
Yeah.
And his unique ability makes it to where you can actually tame the beasts out in the wasteland and use them as creatures to fight others.
Oh, that's interesting. I don't think I've heard of a game that lets you do that, where you can manipulate enemy pawns, like not just temporarily, but actually like throughout gameplay.
Yeah.
Yes.
And most of the roles that we designed, they came from the idea of how asymmetric can we make this game so that when you play as the diplomat, for example, and then you go and you play as the bounty hunter in the next game, your strategy has to change drastically from the diplomat to the bounty hunter because they play very, very different games. The diplomat does extremely well with using the card deck, the political card deck, whereas the bounty hunter does extremely well with taking out monsters. Wildlife, as we call them.
One thing I've noticed is because I'm the type of person who likes to push things, so I've played everything from more combat focused, like the veteran, the warlord, to the shaman, to I think I've played the mechanist before. One thing I've noticed throughout is you have to play to your strengths, but at no point in time have I ever personally felt that
restricted.
Not restricted, but that one character seems more broken than the other. Because with the element of the political cards, I can just as easily like send you resources and blow up your stockpile that you've been hoarding for God only knows how long. I've done that several times. But at no point do I feel like one is better than the other intrinsically. The roles definitely play more to what do you want to do? What is your preferred play style? And I think there is a good variety that there's going to be something for everyone.
I agree.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I like that. The focus on playstyle is definitely a thing that a good GM does in a role-playing game. To see that carried over to a more traditional tabletop pawns type game is actually pretty great, because it does focus in on what your players are interested in at that moment. And as any good GM knows, that what they're interested in for their character at that moment may change, and maybe they just need to refresh themselves and play the hunter for a while, or they need to go back to the shaman that they normally play. So that's really cool to see that kind of integrated into the rule set. How long does a game of Wasteland typically take to run through?
Well, I think the best argument for that would be to say it depends on the players and how focused they are on the game. If you have people getting distracted around the table, it can take a while, but that's the same with most board games.
Absolutely.
If you have focused players and you're playing at the maximum count of 6 players, which it'll be expanded upon for the future, you're probably looking at roughly 2 hours to maybe 3. Because
that's a really good game night kind of quotient to fill in, so that's good. Now,
yeah, and all our sorry.
No, go ahead.
All our playtests have basically shown that the 2 hour mark is generally when someone is spiraling up to win.
Okay. So, Now you mentioned kind of the win requirement in the game, that each character has their own way to get to that win requirement. What is that in a little bit more detail, so that we can understand kind of like what our end goal is as players of this game?
Okay. Well, there's a guy named Leon, and he's the one who's founding this alt filter, which is that's lore based. I'm not going to go into that unless you want me to later. And Leon is trying to manipulate the world as he sees fit to reestablish this old empire that was once the great empire called Altfelder. And so you're trying to please him on a loyalty track. However, there are various things that happen during the course of the game that will either make him angry with you or make him happier with you. And as you move up on the track, it also makes it easier for other players to hit you harder. So you have this sort of balancing mechanism going on where you're trying to get to 21, what I'm calling loyalty points. And once you get to 21 loyalty points, you end the game. There are no real, like, you don't have victory points, you don't have any of that stuff. It's more about how well can you politicize inside what we've given you, almost basically a sandbox to play with. Each individual role itself, and I want to clarify this, doesn't have its own set of goals, but it has its own way to achieve the goals that Leon has. Leon has a card every game that's placed down that has 4 stars on it, and those 4 stars are this accomplished, this accomplished, this accomplished, and this accomplished. And once that happens, that person who's gotten that card done wins the game immediately. So you could rush that instead of trying to do the loyalty and playing with the loyalty. However, on the loyalty board, if you move past a certain amount, you'll also be able to place a star down on the loyalty board. And the stars are basically representative of how well you're doing. The more stars you have out, the better you're doing. The less stars you have out, the worse you're doing. Another game to reference on this is Scythe. Scythe uses the same system.
So the other thing that I wanted to kind of discuss on, and this is kind of how we'll kind of close things out, is I can hear the compressing of gears and the sand is kicking up. What is the walker? This crazy beast and the constructs that are inside here. What is the kind of fear that players should feel with this thing?
Nope.
Tom.
Goodbye. I'm gonna run into town and let it deal with the town.
And die.
The town will die.
Ben,
I won't.
It's okay. I mean, it's my online handle.
I know, we're having trouble with it. Ben, add what you want to.
I mean, my character hasn't actually fought constructs yet.
Yeah, but in the game.
Yeah, in the game itself.
In the game.
In the game itself, we do a really good job of translating how they are in the actual tabletop into the board game as well. Like, they're still big, scary, hulking monstrosities of flesh and metal. And they're still very hard to kill. And you still very much want to work with other people to do it. That's the biggest thing that Wasteland has always encouraged, is teamwork.
Yes.
Like, both the board game and the tabletop. Both of them have always been all about teamwork.
I do like the balance that you guys have struck with the roles and these tracks for loyalty and the stars for specifically going after like the in-game goals, along with the fact that to deal with these constructs that are out there, you do have to rely on the other players, even though you have your own objectives. Sometimes you got to take a step back from those objectives to be able to conquer the thing that's going to destroy all of you.
Right, yeah. Do you have anything to add real quick?
To be completely honest, if you think the constructs are really bad, which they are, the walker itself is the big daddy of the constructs.
Yeah.
If you see the walker come out, you either are at the very end of the game, or everything that you have built up towards at this point is going to come crumbling down on top of your head quicker than you can even imagine it.
Right. Lore-wise, constructs are basically these biomechanical creatures that exist on the Wasteland world, which is also known as Terra 4. And the origin of them is somewhat mysterious. A lot of people think that this guy named Tilrek the Madman created them. But in the campaign, we've revealed already that that's not the case at all, actually. That they were created way before Tilrek the Madman was even alive. Even before his 4 brothers and he were alive. And so their origin kind of almost becomes a mysticism in and of itself, a shamanistic idealism, a shamanistic representation of the wasteland and how brutal and how mean, but at the same time how just wondrous and kind of sublime it has become.
Mm-hmm.
As far as the way that the walker functions, the walker has been seen in the campaign and is known to be a thing. In this game, which takes place before the campaign takes place, the walker hasn't yet arisen. As you go through the deck of encounter cards, you'll come across encounter cards that are special encounter cards that have a number on them. When you hit number 8, you'll be spawning the walker in the middle of the board. And the walker then will move according to an AI system and destroy tiles as it moves across them. I don't mean destroys what's on the tile, I mean it eliminates the tile. Mm-hmm. As in, it makes it a barren, you can't use it anymore. No matter what you had there, it's gone now. Constructs also drop something called black blood in their wake. When they die or when they're killed, they'll drop this black blood and it will spread from tile to tile. This is also seen in the campaign as people who have been in black blood or have been drenched with black blood have suffered very, very terrible effects. As far as what they are, well, that's my secret. Let's just be honest here.
That's
I'm a DM. I have a lot of things I want to keep to my chest. But I will tell you this. The origin of the constructs is something that has, as far as I know, and I've read a lot of the literature, I can't compare it to anything I've seen in literature so far. And that sounds arrogant, but it's true.
Okay. So I did mention that the $60 is the box gets sent to you. That's everything all at once. There is an interesting tier on here that I really like is the print and play. If you were interested to support this game and just kind of see where things go, there's a really great tier for you where you can get all the materials printed off, and it's a really fast turnaround, actually. You guys have it set to where it's almost immediate access to the rules as soon as you've finalized everything. Is that right?
As soon as the Kickstarter is over, if we're successful, everybody will get the print and play almost immediately. I have all the files already ready to go.
See, that's excellent. From a guy that waited like 2.5 years for a Kickstarter, Phil, that is amazing. I can tell you that much. Having immediate backing support like that. So if this game goes through with its Kickstart as we're hoping for, what is the projected delivery date? I see that we have some delivery that is both inside and outside the U.S., so I do have some European viewership as well. If you guys are interested, they will definitely be sending the game out and everything too. What is the expected delivery date, at least as far as like start shipping? Because I know that depending on how far you are, sometimes shipping can take a little longer.
Well, as far as shipping is concerned, the estimated one on the Kickstarter is 2019 June. The reason for that is because I paid attention to a Kickstarter guy who runs this stuff called Isaac Childress, and Isaac Childress has had some issues with shipping in the past. So I wanted to give ourselves a far date, but I guarantee that if the Kickstarter is successful, it will not be June 2019. It will be much earlier than June 2019.
Excellent.
As for what that might be, I will be updating constantly.
Excellent.
That will be talking to the factory. That'll be figuring out all that sort of stuff.
And I do know that I think the print and play is still available at the higher tiers as well, so you'd still be able to go out and print the game as well.
Yes. Yeah. For every tier, if you want the print and play and you supported our game, contact me. Send me something through Kickstarter, and I'll send you the print and play. This isn't about making money. This is about having fun. This is about introducing people to a world that I hope to continue to grow as I get older and everybody around me helps me. So if you've given me money for a Kickstarter, I'm going to give you the print and play. You can print it out on your own, and you can play as much as you want before you get your actual copy. That is fine with us. Nobody here at this table has any issue with that.
Absolutely. So if you want to get your hands on the print to play, the cheapest way to do so, if you are limited on your funds, is only $5, which is a very reasonable amount to get a fully functional game. From the looks of it, you may have to print out some like cardboard tokens or something like that to be able to fill out the token slots. But this game, as they mentioned, it's going to have 80 tiles in it. It's going to have a lot of replayability. So my personal recommendation as the guy running this is if I had the funds to do it right this second, The one that I'm going to back for once I get it all cleared is probably going to be the $60 range because I want to have the physical copy inside my home. I want to be able to flip the tiles, be able to have the full tactical sense of this game. So I know that when it comes to tabletop games, it's super important to recognize that tactical sense. You said that you've been speaking with manufacturers. What kind of quality, as far as like the tiles themselves, the figurines, that we should be expecting out of this?
We're looking at 3.5 millimeter cardboard for the tiles, which is a relatively thick cardboard.
Mm-hmm.
It would be something similar to having 3 to 4 magic cards stacked on top of each other. So they wouldn't be too thick to sit on the table and, be hard to flip, but they wouldn't be too thin either. Therefore, the map itself, as it's built, will be light and easy to move and manipulate, but it'll also be sturdy enough so that you can enjoy the things you're going with. The creature tokens, we're investigating the option of making the creature tokens into little standees that will actually move around the board instead. And those would be, of course, of a thicker cardboard. We're also looking into, with the cards themselves, putting them on linen, making linen cards, because the feel is much nicer and they tend to stay together a lot longer.
Yeah.
And of course, the artwork, we want the artwork to be showcased. And doing it on just normal, like, poker style cards, we looked at a few little samples. It just didn't look right. Something just didn't feel right. So we're looking at high quality components to answer your question directly. I'm a perfectionist in some degree, and I personally look at a board game and I say, okay, so I have over 100 on my shelves, and I look at it, I open it up, and I go, wow, this is great, or this is okay. I want it to be great. This is our first thing off the line.
A lot of games, like the board games, just opening the box, you have like 10 seconds to really capture your audience. If it doesn't look good coming out of that box, you've already lost half your people. And they don't even know what the game's about at that point. They haven't played it. They just read the spiel on the back, opened it up, and then thought, it doesn't look like it's very good. Yeah, so that's a really, really good investment of the time. Now, I do want to point out that, as with any Kickstarter, the more funds that these guys can amass before the ends of their campaign does mean a greater quality in product. Just like any other Kickstarters that I've supported in the past, these guys are focused on the quality of their product more so than lining their pockets. So I give them full endorsement, which is part of the reason for this whole interview here. These guys are definitely looking to put out a game to enrich the culture of gaming, not to try and line their pockets and make off with a bunch of money. With that said, do you guys have anything you'd like to add as far as what we can expect out of maybe a future update or any sort of secrets about the game, maybe?
Anybody want to talk? Tom, you want to say anything? No? All right, well, yeah, sure. So we've already planned roughly 2 expansions at this point. And the way that we planned these expansions was to elaborate on the player and not on the map yet. So the first expansion is listed on the Kickstarter. It's called the Underworld expansion. It gives you more options for the specialists you can recruit. It gives you more options for the materials you can have. It also gives you a secondary board that allows you to do some stuff playing with factions. I kind of want to keep that one close to my chest, though. I think we all do, because it's sort of supposed to be that, oh, you got this expansion, now here's a surprise. It's a good surprise, don't get me wrong, but it's a surprise nonetheless. And then the other one we have is going to investigate the idea of crafting. We're going to call it Tilrek's Lab. I mentioned Tilrek earlier. He's a canonical character that's really important to the Wasteland world. And we're going to investigate being able to combine the materials that you collect throughout the world and add some new materials in there so that you can create unique things with a crafting system that would probably be more similar to a video games crafting system than a card games crafting system or a board games crafting system. We're going to be looking at how can you add different things to this one sheet and you make that unique device that nobody else knows how to make. So those are the things that we're excited to see forthcoming. Miniatures, we have done mostly digital tests of the miniatures, and we're planning on making the walker as this massive miniature if we can get enough funding, and that will be for every game. If we get to a certain goal, every game will get that massive walker miniature. The construct miniatures, we've investigated making them different shapes and sizes with some very strange things. You can kind of look at Ben's artwork and see some of the derivatives that we're going to play with. But for the most part, they're all going to be very sturdy because they're bottom heavy.
Mhm.
And as they get closer to the top, it's going to be more delicate, fine work.
And I've actually been pulling directly from Ben's artwork to render them myself, so they'll be pretty accurate.
And we're going to have buildings that you can build on your tiles as well when you take over by claiming one, which is elaborated on the Kickstarter. And if we can get enough on those, the buildings themselves are going to be wood, and they're going to be high quality crafted wood. So we'll send it to the factory with our little 3D print, and we'll say this is going to be made out of wood. So they're going to have to go through and carve all of it. But we have some really interesting and unique designs for how those buildings would look.
All right, excellent. I think we're going to wrap it up here. For anybody who is interested in Wasteland, I did put a link to it inside the comments section of this video. Make sure that you follow it. Like I said, you can definitely get it shipped to your home. And it sounds like June of 2019 might be a little bit of a stretch as far as what these guys are shooting for. But they've been very forthcoming as far as information is concerned. I know one of my pet peeves when it comes to Kickstarters is not enough updates. These guys are about halfway through their campaign, have already updated 5 times. That's a good sign as far as I'm concerned. So definitely check these guys out. They'll definitely give you a product that's going to give you hours and hours of entertainment and exploration, survival, and probably a few deaths inside there. Thanks everybody for tuning in, and I'll see you at the gaming table.